we talked about Nightreign 2 episodes ago with Clyde. That was like fresh off release. That was the weekend the game came out. I was kind of, feelings were still up in the air, I think, for most people and for me as well. A lot of my opinions haven't changed. Some of them have. But back then I had like played maybe like a third or a half of the game with my friends. At this point, I finished the whole game a while ago, like a week ago. So I think I'm all settled in regards to how I feel about it as it is, as the game stands right now. I want to preface by saying that like I like Souls games only since like COVID. That was when I first got into them. But I'm not like a pro Souls player. I'm not one of those like Souls challenge runners or like a hardcore Souls player. And the reason I bring that up is, first of all, because there's no elite, to have clarified that there's no like elitist attitude, and also it's going to be relevant because if you're really good at Souls games, then that might sway your opinion on this game a lot because it makes a difference. Just diving straight in, like in terms of an out of 10 review, it's complicated because there's multiple ways that people will experience the game. I have 3 rankings. There's a ranking when you have 2 friends who are good at Souls games. So there's 3 of you. And there's a ranking for if you're solo queuing with randoms, so not playing the game solo, but you're solo queuing with 2 randoms. And there's a ranking for literally playing the game solo, like turning it onto single player mode and raw dogging the game by yourself. So first of all, with 2 friends, which is how I was lucky enough to play the game, because I actually have 3 friends, which was kind of annoying because that meant one person was left out all the time.
I know 3 friends is so annoying. Like, please keep it 2.
Like, back off, guys. Like, but it was annoying because sometimes there was always one person left out, and it was a couple of times it was me because I get home from work the last. So it was me a couple of times, but. For me, playing the game with 2 friends, which is how I experienced it 99% of the time, the game was a solid 7 out of 10. And, whoa, calm down. When I say 7 out of 10, I kind of went over this last time a little bit. I feel like 7 out of 10 has like a stigma from like IGN as like being
anything out of 10 has a stigma from every game reviewer because the whole scale is broken, and
that's what I mean. The scale is broken, but that's why I want to clarify that when I say 7 out of 10, I'm saying like 10 is masterpiece, 0 is like Concord, and 5 is like just a mediocre medium game that's like quite good and quite bad, just an average game. So when I give it a 7 out of 10, I do mean it's significantly better than an average game. That that's what I'm saying. There's a lot that goes into that, but that's my ranking for how I played it with two friends. But my ranking for if you're playing with randoms, the game shoots down to a 4 out of 10, which again, if you're going off my like realistic scale, is like just less than an average game. So I feel like I'm not being overly harsh, but obviously we're going to go into all of this in a minute, like why that changes so much. And finally, the rank for if you're playing completely solo, no matchmaking, by yourself, the game is a 2 out of 10. It's literally very, very bad. The game is very, very bad if you just solo queue the game. In the genre of game that we're talking about here, like a roguelike, it's not PvP, like a co-op roguelike. If you think of all of the games like this, all competition, all similar games, they're very playable, if not encouraged to be played solo. Like most of them. It's not often that you play a game that's like only 2 or 3 player, otherwise the game is broken. Like, it doesn't make sense. Like, you can't play it solo.
I would argue that it's generally because it's made for single player, and the multiplayer is something that's kind of added as an afterthought, or is kind of like a side. Whereas they take the single player experience and they toss a little bit of difficulty in it to make it multiplayer. Whereas Nightreign, from the bottom up, multiplayer game, 3-party group, kind of like Left 4 Dead is kind of multiplayer game, 4-party group, Yeah. So fair. I think it's a little bit more set in stone in that regard.
Fair. I'll talk more about the solo stuff later, but just to keep that in the back of your minds. Okay. I want to start off just by now that I've given like the rankings, I want to just talk about like just point by point. I want to go through positive stuff first. There's a lot of really positive stuff about this game, and I'm just gonna list all the things that I liked about this game first before we talk about like stuff that's or stuff that's just like actually kind of aggressively bad. So the week or week and a half that me and my friends like played this game very often was genuinely some of the most co-op fun like we've had as a friend group in many years, in a really long time. It's fantastic because you have to lock in so hard, and there's so much communication, there's so much strategizing, you're under so much pressure, and it's one of those games where like, you know, you're trying to be like as efficient as possible, and there's so many ways you can do it because you're on the time limit, and you're like, okay, we can go to this location first and we can get like this item that we need for the final boss, or we can go to this location and get like an extra heal, and it's all happening so fast, and you are rewarded for communicating like concisely and effectively with your teammates, which isn't good if you're solo queuing, because the game has no quick chat or like the game has no like quick text chat or any kind of voice chat at all. So if you're with randoms, you're basically just
there's no way to communicate.
No, you can ping items, but pinging an item isn't really that helpful because that could kind of mean anything. Like there's two players.
Can you ping like the ground, like go over here, look at this. Okay.
No, you can ping the map. So yeah, that is effectively it. Yeah, but and it does make like a line in the sky, but you have to open the map and then scroll around the map and ping the map every single time. You know, instead of just being like ping a direction. It's not.
Yeah, like look, there's a mob over here. Or
No,
try to avoid this fire pit or something.
No, it's not. It's not that nice.
That's wild.
That seems like
think they'd at least have some contextual pinging or something, like the bare minimum.
I think that's something that's likely to get added because that seems like an easy addition. So I think that could get added. But anyway, yeah, this is supposed to be positive. This is supposed to be positive, okay? They're communicating with friends and like running around doing shit as fast as possible. Bum rushing bosses, clearing out POIs is so satisfying with friends because you're on the time limit is so important that you go in there like fucking SEAL Team 6. Like you just you go in, you just ignore the mobs. You don't even look at the mobs. You just run past it. The mobs eat your fucking dust. And then you find the enemy with the health bar, you kill it, you pick up the loot, and then you run, and then you immediately sprint to the next like POI that you want to go to. That's how fast paced the whole thing is. At least if you want to be good. The basic game in regards to just the way you attack enemies and kill them, and the Elden Ring weapons, the Elden Ring systems, the Elden Ring animations, and the Elden Ring gameplay. In terms of combat, that's all 1-to-1 with base game Elden Ring. Which you know it goes without saying, tried and tested, tried and proven, very good. So there's basically
all the like the weapons, the weapon styles, and the abilities. They're all directly taken from Elden Ring.
Yes.
Okay, there's no like new weapons.
No, not yet. Hopefully one day, but no, there's no new. There's new. Well, I know you weren't talking about enemies, but the main new enemies in the game are like the Night Lord bosses. In terms of like enemies on the field, they're all from Elden Ring, including the bosses on the field as well. The bosses on the field are from Elden Ring, or they've brought back. So this was the next point I had down anyway. The nice surprises of they brought back some really old classic FromSoft bosses, and which is really cool because they look great in Elden Ring. And when you don't know what to expect, and you see like, because it's not even like just the most popular ones. It's like there's like Gaping Dragon and Smelter Demon, which is from Dark Souls 2. And there's Dancer of the Boreal Valley. Like these were quite random, and they weren't. I hadn't seen them in any trailers or anything, so it was a really nice surprise seeing that they put the effort into to bring some of these into a new game, because that's not the kind of thing they would normally do. So I wasn't really expecting that to happen. Finishing off all this positive stuff, all the glazing, just the whole thing from running around the map, hitting all the POIs, clearing the POIs. With your friends who are all locked in, invested, like sweating. And then after all that, defeating the cool bosses, some of them being like surprise returns, like Dancer and shit, beating those. And then making your way all the way to the final Night Lord boss, which is like a raid boss. And taking it down, like going down, getting revived, just like barely holding it together and getting the win. Really, really, really fun. Like I said, it was with my two friends, it was some of the most co-op fun we've had in a really long time. That's why the game's getting a 7 out of 10 in the conglomerate of 3 friends or 3 people who are decent at Souls games who are able to talk to each other. In that context, really, really, really good. Not like great FromSoft game, because other stuff we're about to talk about, but I had so much fun I can't give it lower than 7 out of 10. To start, the negative stuff, this is kind of one of the biggest things about the game, and it's going back to the solo thing a little bit, and it's in regards to balancing. Basically, the game's balanced so strange because it's designed around 3 players, but the way it feels is the game's really, really, really hard solo because you're supposed to be playing with 3 people. But when you're locked in with 2 friends like me, it goes from being too hard solo to being like almost too easy with 3 good friends, which is really strange how that works. Because the last like 4, because there's like, I can't remember how many, it's like 8 or 10, maybe less, actual total Night Lord like hunts that you can go on, so like levels.
Yeah.
The last like 4, I think we did all of them consecutively without failing. And it was really fun, and we were getting like, it wasn't like easy, like we were just fucking steamrolling it. We had we had scrappy fights where we were going down, but we didn't fail a single time in the last like 4 runs, which was surprisingly easy. And the final boss as well. I was expecting the final boss to be maybe like a huge difficulty spike. He really wasn't. He was cool as fuck though. But again, we beat the final boss first try after first trying the last 3. My two teammates actually went down at the very end of the final boss, and I had to solo him for like a short like 45 seconds while I got off the last few shots with my bow and arrow. I was playing the archer character.
Nice.
And I managed to pull it off. It feels like we didn't finish yet because it felt like what we were doing was appropriately difficult for a little while, and then the game just ended. If that made sense. Like the game just ended before we were all expecting like the huge like, oh my god, like whoa, there's like an extra final boss who's really hard, or there's an extra map that's really hard, or there's an extra like, oh shit, like look at this, like the stakes have changed. No, we were just kind of steamrolling the bosses, and then the game ended. That was how it felt. It's actually kind of a joke when you're solo. It's practically impossible to play the game normally because you know how I mentioned before with the POIs that you are on kind of a time limit because the circle will start to shrink in. And when a circle shrinks in, that obviously cuts off the amount of places you can go to. So you got to try and go to like the most important ones. But when you're a solo, it's so much harder to clear these POIs that you're just like, you're way more strapped for time because you go into a POI and you just get ganked because there isn't 3 of you just one-shotting everyone. Like you just get ganked immediately. Like ganked.
I can understand solo being incredibly difficult compared to 3, but what makes it so much more difficult playing with 2 other friends versus playing with randos? Like what's the factor that I mean, obviously communication, but like what do you need to communicate for? You know, like what falls apart?
Yeah, so it's kind of when you're playing, you kind of have to say some really specific stuff sometimes. Like, because me and my friends would make a plan. Like early on in the game, we'd be like, "Right, we're gonna go and get that. We're gonna go and get that. The church, which is like a flask, and then we're gonna go and get like because we know the game tells you the weakness of the main Night Lord boss before you start the run. So we're like, okay, we're going to go and hit all the POIs that have lightning because they're labeled, and we're all going to have a lightning build, which is the weakness of the final boss. Playing with randoms, everyone kind of has a different idea of like where you want to go and what you're going to do, which would be easily alleviated if there was like a really good pinging system, or like, you know, just a voice chat, like a push to talk voice chat, or a quick chat, like just a quick chat like Rocket League or something, like, you know, come here, like follow me, or like this item's here, or like being able to address specific players, like you, Archer, this is good for you.
Is one of the biggest downfalls of randos, just not being able to coordinate your build.
Yeah, not being able to coordinate the build, not being able to coordinate like the way the 3 of you are going to play for maximum efficiency is a really big deal. And this isn't even mentioning the fact that when you play with randoms, a lot of them are just bad sometimes. Like that's I feel like that's just standard for searching with randoms in any game. But when this is the whole game, like this isn't like an optional, but like this is the whole game is this. So if you don't have friends who own it, that's how you're experiencing the whole game. with randoms who are a dice roll on whether they're going to be helpful or not. You're rolling a dice every single time you play, and you just paid $35, £35. So
I hear you.
If you're paying £35 and you want to play solo, or you want to play with, and you don't have friends and you are thinking about playing with randoms, just don't spend the money. Just buy like a really good roguelike, like Risk of Rain 2, the best roguelike of all time, which I think is like £15. You can buy it for like £10 on key websites.
Yeah, that's a deal.
Yeah, like there's a lot of positive stuff about this game, but most of it is when you're playing with your friends. Like the vast majority of it. Like I just said, playing solo is tedious and broken and feels unfinished, and playing with randoms feels like you're rolling a dice every time you play. Like your level of fun and your level of satisfaction is not up to you because you're only 1/3 of the team, and the other two can just do whatever the fuck they want, and you can't control them, and you can't speak to them either, so you can't try and amend that issue. It's just completely random. It's completely random.
What a huge oversight. I mean, one of the best parts of multiplayer is like being able to, to gel with other people as far as, like what you're set out to do, your roles, your individual roles, or like you said, just planning, there's just so many, and I feel like it enriches the experience to be able to communicate. I know there's some games where like they kind of relish the fact that you're just kind of multiplayer and no one really speaks to each other and it's part of the vibe or whatever. And I know Dark Souls fan probably think a little of that, but like just for someone like me who's played multiplayer games so much, who just loves to, just interact with other people as we play games, it loses that,
It definitely does, yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's the general factor of just skill, like you'll get people of varying skill levels versus, your friends, which have played games and are, fairly competent in games and stuff versus just a random whatever. I know that.
I mean, like I said, I feel like it's an easy fix because you can add one of those pings that have like a ping scroll wheel where you ping like an icon or something like that, and that would like.
I feel like if it's not fixed soon, it'll be modded in. Like it's that important,
Yeah.
Right.
The whole too hard. Well, I didn't really talk about solo that much, but you get the gist of it, right? It kind of makes sense. But like, if you imagine playing a game that's made for 3 people by yourself, you're ganked all the time. The bosses have fucking loads of health. He did do an update where they alleviated it a little bit, but I went on and it was still too hard for me personally. Like I said, I'm not like great at these games. And doing like the night 1 boss that you'd normally steamroll with friends or even randoms, it's just so hard by yourself because they're normally more than one enemy. And solo. And you actually have to fully fight the boss by yourself, that's how you do it in Elden Ring. That's normal. That makes sense. That works. That's fine. But in 3s, you're all just jumping and like smashing the boss's fucking head, and you're all flying around like maniacs, and you're like the range character. And they did an update recently where they made it where you get way more runes to try and alleviate the issue of not being able to get enough runes in time. They made an update where they did that, but I've played since then and I was still struggling. I mentioned right at the beginning that like if you're like a challenge runner, it's going to make a big difference. Because I say that because challenge runners have already like beaten fucking Nightreign, no death and shit. So for them, it's really not that hard. But like for the average player, like for me, it's really hard. And those challenge runners who have done that also said that it wasn't fun. At least one that I saw on Twitter. Like I can't remember his name.
It wasn't fun.
It might have been Gino Machino. I can't remember who it was. Somewhat like one of these solo challenge runners who did that said, like, yeah, you can do it, and they did it, but it was not fun because it was very like it's just so tedious. You're by yourself. You're fighting like bosses with 3 people's worth of health. You're doing like you're playing kind of scummy. You're running around. You're dealing like chip damage. It's going on for like a really long time. So yeah, it's
It's funny if one person who's able to beat solo says it isn't fun.
Yeah.
Then how does he have fun playing with multiple players if he could literally just carry the like it must be easy mode on him even with randos. He's just doing everything.
Considering that this is a roguelike, like, I don't know if Fromsoftware ever said that themselves, but it's listed as a roguelike on Steam. And it very clearly is like, you go in the game, you run into the final boss, you reset if you die, and you get random items with random abilities. Okay. Even if you don't want to say that's a roguelike, it's still just comparable. So comparisons.
There's also roguelite.
Roguelite, yeah. I don't remember the difference, so I'm not gonna get into that.
I don't know if it's concrete, but it's basically like there's roguelike elements, but they're just kind of lighter, you know.
Okay, maybe it's more like that. Maybe
I don't know the actual definition, but
but anyway, the reason
something like that.
The reason I put it down is because the roguelike elements of this game are so lacking. Like inexcusably lacking. Look, Risk of Rain 2 is going to come up a lot because whenever you talk about like a roguelike game, Risk of Rain 2, in my opinion, is the golden standard anyway. And if you just think, have you played much Risk of Rain 2? Or this might not make sense.
Oh,
yeah. Yep. So if you think about Risk of Rain 2 and think about like some of the items that you pick up and the things that they do, how many of them are like unnoticeable and boring? None of them. There's so many items in Risk of Rain 2 and they're all cool. Like, it doesn't break the game, but they all like obviously they're not all applicable. They're not all applicable to every build, but they all do something that's like immediately noticeable. All like even the ones that are like the gem where you do like the close range damage. It all like adds up really quickly and you start to feel really good, like really powerful quickly. This isn't a factor in Nightreign at all. So you pick up the weapons which have, you know, the damage stat, and it's the gray, blue, purple, gold system that we've seen time and time again in like RPG games. So obviously, you know, based on the color, like this one's better than this one, this one's better than that one. You'll do better damage. That's noticeable in terms of like different rarities. But all of the stats, all of the the perks on weapons, abilities on weapons are so boring. Like they're like, you know, plus 10% range damage, or like plus 5% this, plus 10% this, like all of them. And the way the game works is
raw stat crap.
Yeah, raw stats, all of them, literally all of them. But the way the game works is you have 6 slots for weapons. All the weapons have a perk on them, but you get all those perks even if they're not equipped. So to a certain point, you're not picking up the weapon for the weapon anymore. You're just looking around for like what has the best perk on it. They're all just not cool. Like, and especially in a game like a universe like this, like think of all the cool shit you could have done. Like, imagine if you were like running around exploding with rot like every 5 seconds, or if, you know, every time you swung your sword there was like a lightning explosion that would do like, you know, that would do AoE damage to all enemies nearby, or like you'd have an explosion, or you could jump really high, or you could run really fast. I think of so many possibilities.
Like you roll extra far, or you get like it uses less stamina, or you have increased invincibility frames. Like,
some of them are like that. Yeah. But like the last couple of ones you mentioned still kind of feel like statty though, like statistically.
Yeah,
like, you know,
they are kind of statty. Yeah, like that's what really makes a roguelike, if you ask me, is being able to, especially in multiple runs, like how varied the builds are, like the different routes they can have, the impacts that individual items can have on your gear.
Yeah,
you know, like that's what makes it so fun with the roguelike. I think one of the best indicators that it's a really good system is when you have a choice of upgrades and you just can't choose between the two. You know, like they're both so good. You know, like that means it's good because the system's, you know, it's got a lot of balanced options versus like every time you have to choose plus attack every time. It's just the best, you know.
That's what Nightreign feels like.
Those are terrible. You know, it doesn't even feel roguelike at that point, right?
If that was like a new roguelike not connected to like a known universe, people would give that hell. Like that's so bad. Yeah. That's not acceptable for roguelike, just having such bad roguelike features.
Yeah, it gets a pass because it's Dark Souls 100%.
Think about the characters in Risk of Rain. Are any of them even remotely similar to each other at all? Not other than the ones that like shoot. So different.
Yeah.
This is slightly excusable because it is like a Dark Souls game, so everyone wants that same Dark Souls combat, so you can't change too much. Yeah. You couldn't just have someone have like one weapon or a gun or some shit, or like a fucking like, you know, something crazy. But still, I think this is when you switch characters, you really don't feel like much changed. The abilities on them are noticeable, but they're not like epic. They're just not. None of the character abilities are epic. Like one of them is like a big explosion gun thing that does kind of high damage, but to be honest, not really. On like bosses, it doesn't really trip off that much. One of them has a thing where all your teammates regain mana and health every time they hit an enemy, which is cool. That's these are ultimate abilities. These are like you've waited a long time for this to charge up. This is an ultimate ability. One of them is a really big arrow shot that is good against like some mobs, but again doesn't do that much damage to bosses.
These abilities feel like they'd be like regular cooldowns in most roguelikes.
Yeah, abilities like actual character abilities, pretty lame. Let's go watch Risk of Rain 2 again. One of the things I love about Risk of Rain is when you're playing as each individual character, the way you move around the map is always different, to the point where you feel like you're engaging with the character and his movement systems. So you feel like you're playing the game still all the time. Like the railgun character in Risk of Rain 2, who has like that grenade where you like jump where you grenade jump around for movement, and the mech suit guy with the grapple hook where you can sling around the fucking map. You know, each character is like doing different things all the time. It's not just their weapon that's different. It's the whole character.
Different movesets. They have different strategies. Different. It's the whole character.
But in Elden Ring Nightreign, every time you like finish your POI and you want to move, everyone just holds sprint, and you have to do some like really janky climbing sometimes to get up like some kind of tombstones to navigate around. Yeah. And it's just boring. Like moving from one place to another is boring. You're not engaging with the game. You run past all the mobs. Everyone has the same speed and the same movement set, which is funny because one of the characters has huge wings bigger than its own body.
Yeah.
One of the characters has fucking huge wings and he just runs around like an idiot. Like, come on. I'm not saying he necessarily needs to be able to fly, but he could do like a little jump in the air and then float, like a dash.
Some more individuality to the heroes. Yeah.
And the mage character could do a blink. Movement it's just the same for everyone. No one feels.
What was with the perks you wanted to?
Oh, the perks. Yeah. So the perks are called relics, and you unlock them after every game. And the game also has quests that you do by doing stuff in the map for certain characters in a little journal, and you get some like character specific perks, relics for doing that as well. And you get characters, and you get good ones for beating the main Night Lord bosses. All of them, they all drop quite a decent one. My problem with them is very similar to my problem with the abilities. Most of it is very, very non-noticeable minor stat increases. Yeah. That just like honestly, I don't believe anyone notices, because I played a lot of Nightreign, and a lot of those perks just weren't. I couldn't tell. And there is a few of those in the relics, and some of them that I've had, they've like have been a really cool idea, but they're so they're so weak that it didn't really make a difference. One of them was I liked playing the bird guy for a while, who starts with a great shield, and one of the perks I got for him was that every time you successfully blocked, which you do all the time with the shield, you just get given free health every time. Which I was like, wait, that sounds really good. Like that's a good one. That's really cool. I put it on though, and it was so weak that like it would take you forever to get like any significant amount of health back. So that's like there is perks like that. So that's definitely a step in the right direction. That's good, because there's also things like getting successive hits will give you mana back for like the mage characters, and you know, getting hits with spears on that shield character who can shield poke with spears. Getting hits with spears will give you like, will improve your guard, or will give you mana back, or will give you health back. There's those. But like I said, even when those ideas are there, they're usually so bad that they're not that good. They're not like worth using, because you may as well just have a stat increase instead. And also the way the perks work is they're like these little balls that you put in a goblet slot, and like the way it works is there's a tiny one which only has 1 bonus, and then there's a medium-sized one which has 2 bonuses, and then there's a big one which has 3 bonuses, and they're all randomly rolled. So you can roll a big one with 3 bonuses that will have that can have great bonuses. Like there's no limit. Like if you have a big one, that doesn't mean you can only have like 3 not very good bonuses. You can have a big one with 3 great bonuses on it. Like it happens quite often actually. And the problem with that is it just completely invalidates the smaller ones. What's the point of keeping the smaller ones? It's so strange. It's such a strange implementation of perks, because you just end up with loads and loads of these little tiny balls that only have 1 ability on them. But that 1 ability you already have in other bigger ones that have like 3 abilities in the same slot. So why would you ever use these? Like literally, why would you ever use these? They're so bad. and it's
bad
again
itemization.
that just feels unfinished. It feels unfinished. This for me was one of the bigger ones because some of the other things we just mentioned I can forgive to a degree. This is also a massive wasted opportunity, especially considering the game that this is based off, and that is the fact that the replayability or like the novelty of like playing it and it being like new and exciting wears off so quick. And the main reason
I can imagine if it, especially because it uses assets from Elden Ring, it just feels like an Elden Ring mod, right?
Yeah, it wears off so quick.
Like there's some new bosses, but yeah, I mean, if it just has the same gameplay, a lot of the same enemies, a lot of the same movement and stats and stuff, like it doesn't sound like it's adding too much new that would keep you,
well, it's not even just that, because even if you forget about the fact that it's reused assets for a second, in the like on a run to run basis, there's so few things that change that after you've played the game for like a couple of good sessions, you've basically seen everything in the whole game, which I think is like unforgivable for a game like this. There's a big castle in the middle of the map that has loads of enemies that usually drop loads of runes, so it's a place that people try and hit every run. And there's 3 seeds that change the enemies that spawn in there. It can only be those 3. And so one of them is Crucible Knights, one of them is Banished Knights, and one of them is these trolls that like throw pots with some other enemies like backing them up. And that's it. Other than those 3, nothing else can spawn in there. For a franchise like this, where they've pulled bosses from older games in this, and there's so many. Elden Ring is famous for its insane enemy variety. I think it's like offensive to have so little variation of how things appear in terms of the random generation. The random generation is so limited. This goes back to the roguelike aspect feeling lacking, because that's just the fact that there's no, even the enemies themselves, you could give them like a twist, like, maybe they do like, oh, this one's poison. Oh wait, he's doing poison damage. Wow, this run he randomly generated poison damage, or this run he randomly like set me on fire. There's none of that. There's none of that here.
And that's even not that complicated. I mean, I'm not a developer, but like just giving them like a trait or a status effect or something. Like I feel like that's such a big charm of roguelikes. Is whenever you play, it's a fresh experience. Things aren't in the same spot. Enemies aren't in the same spot. The enemy you fought last time, he's going to have a different ability, or your abilities are going to be different. Like there's just so much variety, and like triple underline variety for roguelites. That's what makes it so, you're not just playing, like Doom from beginning to end and all the weapons are in the same spot.
Exactly.
Exactly. It's the charm of the whole experience is that it's so different.
Do you see what I mean when I say that this hits replayability big time? This hits really replayability big time, because like I said before, like I said a minute ago, after a couple of sessions of this game, if you played most of the levels, you've basically seen everything that can possibly happen in this game. You will have.
The more I hear about this game, the more it feels like it should have been like a DLC. What was it, like $40?
It's 35. I don't know how that 35 translates or whatever, but yeah,
like 35. Hearing that about that, there's a lot of full games you can get, for 35, and it doesn't seem worth it. No,
it doesn't. It doesn't feel like it compares to other games that are around that price point. Really, I would love to have a reason to go back and play it, but I don't. Like me and my friends finished it last weekend or whatever, and not a single one of us have touched the game since we finished it. None of us.
I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised.
And that wasn't like a pre-planned thing. We weren't like, oh, we're finished now, I guess we're done. That was we just didn't go back. We just didn't play it again.
Well, what's left? I mean, I remember playing so many roguelites with my friends, and like when you beat it, then you go, okay, now we're ready for the next difficulty level, right?
Yeah.
Or the next affix or whatever. But there isn't. You can't really increase the difficulty on that. Is there difficulty levels?
No,
I don't think there were. No. It's just set.
Same,
so like when you and your friends, when you steamrolled a couple of runs first try, like if that's your first run, then everything after that's just going to get increasingly easier. Like right?
Yeah.
Like I just don't see. I wouldn't want to be playing that more after that either. So yeah. I agree with you that it doesn't seem like something I'd want to keep on playing.
Yeah, that's all I got for. That's basically the end of my notes for Nightreign. But I feel like because we got so negative right now, I need to kind of calm it down a little bit and just revisit what I said at the beginning, and that is that despite everything that I just said, the core Elden Ring gameplay and the bosses and the new bosses and the returning bosses from fucking Dark Souls and shit was so cool that for that first playthrough, for that experience, it was really fucking fun. This game was really fun, and if you have two friends that like Souls-like games, this is probably a must-buy. Like, genuinely, if you have two friends that like Souls-like games and are prepared to play it with you, there's no reason not to play this. It's just a guaranteed, like, 10, 20 hours of really good time.
Yeah.
Replayable?
It's just more Elden
no.
Ring, right?
Yeah, it's more Elden Ring with friends. Replayable? Yeah. No. Great roguelike? No. But it's still an Elden Ring roguelike. It's still an Elden Ring roguelike with cool new bosses. So that's why I gave it a 7 out of 10 with 3 players. 7 out of 10 with 3 players.
That makes sense.
Okay, done.
All right.